politicians. It's up to all of us. I think we've made a real mess here of our political culture. We don't have a very strong, effective, attractive political culture. When you look at the way some of our politicians behave, I'm not talking about outside of Parliament, I mean in relation to politics, the way they address each other, the way they talk about each other, you know, there's a very strong sense that this is sometimes all about performance, the performing being from one party.
Do you see anywhere that you aspire to, or you know, anywhere that does it better?
In terms of other states, well, not. I think some countries get other bits better than some bits than we do. I don't think there's any one place that's ideal. And it's interesting when we talk about some of the emerging nations, as they're called sometimes, emerging economies who are desperately trying to institute their own forms of parliamentary democracy. People are trying different things out. But I think we've become too settled and too complacent about our system.
What about Australian-style compulsory voting?
I personally don't believe in compulsory voting. I would leave as little as possible to be absolutely compulsory, I must say. But I know that others do. And I think, one thing that one colleague suggested was that people should be able to write that they made a conscious decision to abstain on the voting slip, and maybe even say why, but certainly to let politicians know that it's not apathy that prevents people from voting, but really a kind of, I don't know what the heck to do, because these people have said one thing today and then when they're in power they change that. So, you know, how do we then trust them for the next time around? It is an incredibly difficult thing, but I think we all do have a responsibility, because as soon as you say we're not going to engage with this because they're all the same, then we're all done for, actually.
Julie?
There's a lot of other things to pick up on. I think the point about the suffragists and their campaign is absolutely right. I think Marion is absolutely right, though, that a lot of it is about the way that politics is done. And I find a lot of, particularly for the big events, really painfully rubbish at times. You know, it's very sort of nitpicky. You have a sort of fake debate with people putting on a role to argue it. Now, actually, when you turn the cameras off, most MPs are able to talk to each other in sensible ways and actually work together. But as soon as you turn it, this really hit me. There was a debate about youth unemployment. And basically, everybody from the government side was saying it's the last government's fault, because it shot up during that time and things were going well. Everybody from the Labour side was saying, no, it's this government's fault because it hasn't come down. And I was chatting to a Labour MP, who I get on very well with, sort of outside it, and I think she said to me, or I said to her, I don't remember now, nobody's actually talking about what we're going to do about it. It's all about whose fault is it, not about what do we do. And you see this time and time and time again. And I think if we're going to re-energise people, we have to talk much more about values, about principles, rather than the exact details of whose policy said what and which percentage didn't it. You know, so many things that actually get talked about are not the most important things that matter. It's very hard to step back out of that and get into that values discussion. It's what I try to do when I talk in schools. And frankly, somebody was saying about people getting better and more independent when they're older. I find the very best questions I ever get are at schools. They're the most thoughtful, the people who've really taken the time to get engaged.
This is exactly what David Cameron, and in fact, to be honest, all the parties said after the last election. Oh, you know, we've got to make Prime Minister's questions more intelligent. We've got to stop the Yahoo politics. And 3 years on, it's all back to the same old thing.
Well, you've got. I think Julian's right to say that the big set piece pieces are, you know, more theatre than real debates. And actually, you know, if I think of my own experience on the Business Innovation Skills Select Committee, and you look at the way select committees behave, they actually do a pretty good job. Margaret Hodges' committee has done some excellent work in the last 3 years, holding the government to account. And it's, you tend to have consensus. It's very rare that a select committee would split on party lines. The reports are very powerful, taken very seriously by the executive, by government. And actually, if the public would watch more of the select committee work, or if we can have highlights of that, or make it more interesting, get some good broadcasters like Channel 4, or someone to make it more interesting, then you might get a very different opinion of this place. And so it's not all sort of doom and gloom. I think there's some really good work here. You set my mind thinking, you said, what other countries do it well? I actually thought, our select committees are pretty good here. The new innovation under Natasha, she could talk more about it, the Backbench Business Committee, where I've had experience going before that committee where you put forward an idea that you want to debate, and it's taken really seriously, and people actually turn up and debate it. And outside this space, people come up to you and say, oh, you know, that's a really good thing that you did there. You know, I, with many colleagues, looked at recognising what happened to the Kurds as genocide. And we had an excellent debate, I thought, that day in the chamber. And you find lots of other colleagues who had their own experience with the Backbench Business Committee being very good. So I think there's lots of good things. It's how do we then communicate those out to the rest of the country?
Yes. You're on the second row. Where's the microphone? Could you, if you come round to the front, and then just pass it across.
I think a problem we should be addressing is that there's a great divide between what people believe about which party they should choose. I mean, it's a very common perception if you're working class, you choose Labour. If you're upper class, you choose Conservative. And shouldn't more be done to help younger people in our generation to educate them more about which party they should choose, and not just because of their social background?
By who? Who do you want to do it?
Well, I think that it should be done further, and it should be incorporated into our youth, into the education system, and it should become compulsory, because once we do this, then we'll have more knowledge about what to do in our future, and possibly encourage people to make the right decisions.
Okay, yeah, it's the second row.
Also, we also talk about, obviously we talk about vote 16, but you've still got age restrictions being an MP, and the youngest member of the House of Lords is in his 30s. So surely if you're going to get votes at 16, you need to get MPs at 16. And I think one of the problems which you're sort of addressing is the fact that politicians now make a career in Parliament. And what we really need, I think, is turnover. We need more turnover. People just get to Parliament and sit in a safe seat for decades sometimes and lose touch. In reality, I think if you had an MP or member of the House of Lords who was there for a set amount of time, and then you can have a situation where you get more of a turnover, different people coming in. One of the big problems we get, I think, in politics is people coming straight out of university, not really having experience, go straight into a policy unit, straight into a political party. It's the lack of representation.
Let's just pick that up, just in a couple of words. Do those of you who are in favour of votes at 16 also think you should have parliamentarians at 16?
I can't see any reason why not. We're currently allowing people to stand, I think, at 18, which fits. Whether people would want to vote for a 16-year-old is another question. I'll happily leave that to. You're absolutely right to highlight the problem, by the way, of professional politicians. It is a huge increase. The two growth areas are professional politicians, people who've been in media and PR. And I think that's really damaging, because they're both jobs where it's all about spin and what something looks like. We're actually seeing fewer lawyers, fewer people who've ever had a manual job, fewer scientists, fewer engineers, things where it actually matters if something works.
How long do you want to stay in MP?
Well, I think that depends on the people of Cambridge.
No, I mean, given that if you're in a safe seat, or if you make it a safe seat, would you stay there forever?
I certainly wouldn't stay there forever. I don't know. I mean, at the moment I'm focused on trying to get re-elected. It's not a safe seat. In Costa Rica, if you are an MP, it is illegal to stand at the next election. You have to take a gap, and then you can stand again at the election after that, and then you have to have a gap.
Would you support that here?
I don't think it would work here, I mean, Costa Rica has a lot of other things. They got rid of their military ages ago and spent the whole money on education. It's a very, very different place. I think there are problems, but I think the problem is actually more about safe seats. And the fact that we do have lots and lots of people in the Commons, and effectively everybody in the Lords, who isn't really accountable. Because they get their seat, they are there forever, whatever they do. And that is a huge problem. It means they're less and less in touch with what happens. I have to say, we don't have very many safe seats in the Lib Dems, so we haven't quite had to encounter this problem in the same way. But it is a real issue. It means that seats are given much more by patronage rather than by public accountability.
Natasha?
Yes, absolutely. If you have lower voting age of 16, then 16-year-olds should be able to put themselves forward for Parliament, absolutely.
And what about limiting the number of terms you can remain in MP?
There's a couple of problems with that. One of them is, in order to get that passed as a law, you'd have to get MPs to vote for it, which is highly unlikely. I think those are all really interesting ideas about kind of getting a bigger turnover. There's another problem, I think, certainly if you do it, once you become an MP, I'm in a marginal seat as well, so it's a constant worry about whether you're going to lose your job, and then what do you do at the end of it? You lose your job, and that's it. The next day you wake up and you don't have a job, so you have to go and find something else. So it's incredibly insecure. So you know, just in terms of your livelihood. I don't